Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. We have a new governor that's going to be taking office on January 20th. He is Governor Tom Wolf. He's governor-elect right now. The governor of Pennsylvania will be leaving. He has been with us for 4 years. It seems like he's been with us forever as Attorney General before that. We're talking about Governor Tom Corbett, who joins us this morning here on the Gary Sutton Show. Governor, an honor to have you with us.
Well, good morning, Gary, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. So I guess you're in a period of time right now. I don't know if you're having some thoughts or, looking at the future or what you want to do. I know I heard you when you spoke at the Waldorf Astoria about, you're a granddad now, and congratulations on that. By the way, I think you had some twins just not too long ago.
Well, we had twins. Our son had twins in September, and our daughter's going to have a baby next week.
Well, congratulations. So you got a lot there to keep you busy, but let's talk a little bit about where you've been, where you're going, and where you think Pennsylvania is right now. And I guess I want to ask you first, as you look back on the things that you've done the last 4 years, and even before that as Attorney General, what do you reflect on? What are the things that you think were pretty good and you'll be remembered for down the line?
Wow, we don't have enough time for that. Gary, you think about this. I've been down here now for 10 years of my adult life, serving the people of Pennsylvania between the Attorney General's office and as governor. And I think the best thing to say is I've changed the culture of Harrisburg in many different ways. I'm not a traditional, typical politician. In fact, some people would say, I didn't beat my drum enough as all the accomplishments.
And I would be one of those, but go ahead.
And we accomplished 8 years of work in the last 4 years. We really did. And, being governor is not just about legislation, which unfortunately a lot of the media thinks it's, well, what legislation did you get passed? We got a lot passed. We only had 2 that we didn't get passed, but everybody wants to focus on those 2. But we changed the culture starting as Attorney General, where we became a much more friendly consumer protection agency, but also from a law enforcement agency that it is, and began investigations and, well known for 2 investigations. One, the bonus gate investigation here in Harrisburg, and that changed the culture. And then, unfortunately, having to face the lack of investigation of somebody who was a child predator and taking that on and not walking away from it or avoiding it and not getting it done at the speeds that people like us to get things done. But this isn't TV. This isn't a 24-hour show. And, we put a child predator away between myself and then the Attorney General that followed me, but based on our investigation. So we definitely changed that. And then coming in as governor, I said we were going to change the way we do things. We're not going to have walking around money to go buy votes to get things done, and we still got a great deal done in that respect. We built an energy industry in Pennsylvania. As you know, natural gas now, we're the number 2 producer in the entire country. It was number 5 when I came in.
Right.
Unemployment went from 8.2% to 5.1% during the period of time that I've been governor. I think by the time I leave on the 20th, we should have the next report in by then. I suspect it'll be down at 5 across the state. We've employing more people, but we have much greater hope for future jobs. If you go back to the energy industry for a minute and take a look at the Shell ethylene cracker facility that Shell is talking about in western Pennsylvania, they'll make a decision on that, I believe, in the first half of next year. If they decide to build that, that's 10,000 construction jobs to build, 500 jobs to operate, but it brings the whole petrochemical and plastics industry and manufacturing to western Pennsylvania and to all of Pennsylvania. If you look at southeastern Pennsylvania, it's the same thing, where you see we saved the shipyard, we saved the refineries. Refineries are now growing tremendously down there. Manufacturing is coming there. We are becoming a destination state that people are taking a look at, and you in your county certainly see the influx of people coming up from Maryland.
We do.
To get to Pennsylvania because of the policies that we put in place. They're bringing their businesses here and they're bringing their residences here. So we are in a much better place than we were when I took office. When people say I had a $4 billion deficit, and it was a deficit because the money wasn't there and we overspent. We don't have a deficit right now, but what Governor-elect Wolf is going to run into is the fact that government and the cost of government keeps growing, and it's growing at over $1 billion a year, so you have to find more revenue to match that. We see our revenue growing this year. We're going to end, I believe, this fiscal year, if nothing unusual happens, when the fiscal year ends June 30th, we're going to end with somewhat of a surplus. Now, what's going to be an issue is how they're going to spend the surplus. And I had a very difficult time getting a legislature to say, let's control our spending and let's put some money into a rainy day fund. We don't have a rainy day fund. Other states do. We definitely need to have that. So that's going to be a challenge for the government. It was going to be a challenge for us also. And what we have to look at, with Pennsylvania's biggest problem, as far as I'm concerned right now, is the pension crisis. And I think you and the media finally, not you finally, but the media has finally agreed with me that there is a pension crisis. I spent 8 months last year convincing people that there's a crisis. And Mr. Wolf is going to have to face that crisis and take it head on. Otherwise, the taxes in the state are going to go through the ceiling. And
I was talking with Mike Tobash the other night, actually, at a party, and he was, he's one of the guys that came up with that hybrid idea, and I think that's one of the ones you've kind of embraced. And I asked him where that was. He said, we're going to push hard. He said, there's going to be a lot of roadblocks along the way. So it's amazing that people keep wanting to put that off and put it on down the road, because every time you put it down the road, it leaves our generation and goes to the next generation. And you've got a lot of people in the next generation. I know you don't want to have to inherit that problem.
That's exactly right. And if you take a look at it, if you are a younger person coming into state government, you're in your first 3 or 4 or 5 years, are you going to even have a pension in 20 years from now at the rate that we're going? I don't see it happening. They have to make the dramatic change. And the problem with the legislature is they're vested in a pension too. And so they have to vote against what they consider to be their own interest. And there are some very good legislators that are willing to do that. But, they all have to get on this bandwagon and do it. Because otherwise, as I said, if you just look at raising taxes on everybody, all those businesses that are looking at Pennsylvania to come here that are providing the jobs are going to go, well, we're going to stay in the South. We're going to go to South Carolina. We're going to go to Texas. We're going to go to Florida, because that's where the tax advantages are.
When you, one of the things that somebody asked me yesterday to ask you when you come on, I thought it was a really good question. They said, has the governor had a chance to sit down with Governor-elect Wolf, or will he have a chance to sit down with him and maybe give him some thoughts on being governor? Has he asked that of you, or have you had a chance to talk to him? Do you anticipate that?
Yeah, we've talked about 2 weeks ago. right before Christmas, and spent about 2 hours here in the governor's residence, and just chatted. I'm not going to go into the conversation.
No, I'm not asking that. But
yeah, but just chatted. I showed him the governor's residence, but I gave him some of my thoughts. I said, you have to deal with pensions. You cannot avoid it. And I said, when it comes to, one of the things I'm proudest that we got done is this Healthy Pennsylvania, where we're covering 600,000 more people than, or the ability to do that. At the same time, we're going to save the taxpayers of Pennsylvania $4.5 billion over 8 years. I said, you need to have those savings. And I know that, what I read in the paper, they want to roll it back. They just want to do the expansion. Fiscally, there is no responsible way they can do that.
Right.
So we had a 2-hour conversation. It was cordial, and I'll be watching. You all will be watching to see what happens. I don't know if you saw Mike Terzai's installation yesterday as a speaker, and during his speech he talked about fiscal responsibility.
I did, yeah.
And that's what I campaigned on 4 years ago. That's what I campaigned on this past year. It's how we govern. We brought fiscal responsibility to Pennsylvania.
We were talking during this last election. You and I have always been able to talk pretty straightforward, and that's one of the things I appreciated about you is you're a straightforward talker. You might even get mad every now and then, which I also like. But there were people that called our show the one day, and I said, I said, if Governor Corbett did all these things, and I laid out a lot of what you've laid out this morning, why did he lose the election? Why was he even challenged? And there were a whole lot of people that called in that day, and I mean a whole lot, who called in and said, Penn State. They thought you piled on Joe Paterno when it all came down. As you look back on that, is that a regret that you have? How do you look at that whole thing? Because a lot of people, there's still a camp out there that says, and the Penn State people are still very strong about kind of restoring his name, and he was an icon here in Pennsylvania.
Well, they're absolutely wrong. They don't know the facts. You know how stories get started, Gary. If somebody has a misunderstanding, and there was a story that ESPN, the magazine, a reporter there did, that was just totally wrong. talked about me going after Joe Paterno and somebody overhearing me at a restaurant up in State College. Never occurred. It's total fiction.
I'm not talking so much about that as I am about the perception, because it all came down so quickly.
That creates the perception.
Yeah, but the perception was, I mean, just how fast everything came down on him, and it was like he didn't get a chance. That was the perception.
And you know, if people listen to the conversations I've had in the public, to the media, you know, what I talked about is you have to protect the children, and that was my job. No
question about it.
And I, you know, anybody is mad at me for protecting the children, then that's tough.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened is, and I've always said this, and I'm sitting at the chair that I said it at the time. When the board made their vote, I was not there. I was here in Harrisburg, and I did not participate because it was a voice vote. I did not participate. No. I just said, you have to remember the children. And it was really, in my mind, they were talking more about the president of the university at the time than they were about Joe. When that conversation ended, when the vote ended, I hung up. Wasn't even on the line when they made the decision to just call Joe. And I've said this before, had I been there, I would have stopped that. But you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
You have to go there. But everybody believes I'm part of that event because of that. It's totally wrong. But I can't change that. They won't believe it.
I understand that. And obviously, you know, it is what it is.
But let me
Go ahead, sure.
Joe Paterno, and this is what I've repeated. Joe Paterno himself said afterwards that he wished he would have done more.
Absolutely.
Remember that? That's all I've ever repeated.
Mm-hmm.
I agreed with that statement.
Yeah.
I agree with Joe. I wish he would have done more. I've never vilified him or anything. But there are people out there, and there are people that ran their campaigns for statewide office on that issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it may have worked to some degree. Let's face it.
Yeah, I know.
As you look back now, and you'd say, what was your biggest regret, and what was your biggest victory? What would you say for those two things?
Oh boy, there's so many victories.
But your big one, there's got to be a couple that just stand out to you.
Well, I mean, getting a transportation bill done that's going to help rebuild roads and bridges across Pennsylvania, help mass transit across Pennsylvania. In a very inexpensive way for the people of Pennsylvania. You know, last year, 2014, we paved 1,600 miles of roads. A lot of people sat in traffic lines for those, but we're getting those done. We're getting bridges done. The other one was the Marcellus Shale Law, getting that passed so we can develop an industry in Pennsylvania. Right. That, if you think about it, we are just at the very beginning of what is potentially a huge industry for Pennsylvania. We are a competitor among nations when it comes to the development of energy, and I don't think people quite understand that yet.
Right.
We really are going to be leaders. So those are two right there. My biggest regret is I didn't communicate better in my first year before the budget address.
Right.
To talk about how bad the budget was and to talk about the education spending, because from that point forward, I had a very formidable public sector union called PSEA and AFD who spent millions and millions of dollars campaigning against me, extolling a lie that I cut education funding.
And they affected not only your Democratic,
they
but they also affected some of your Republican leadership down, especially in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. As you look to the future, you're still a relatively young man. What do you look to do in the future now?
Thank you for saying 65 is a young man.
Well, listen, I'm 2 years younger than you, and I think I'm a young man. So what the heck? We got to hang together, right?
That's exactly right. Exactly.
So what are you looking forward to doing?
You know what? I'm looking forward to being with those grandchildren. We got, as I said, we have a new one coming next week. So I'm going to be around, and we know it's a little girl, so I'm going to be around my first granddaughter. I haven't been back home in Pittsburgh for 10 years, basically, other than, a weekend here, a weekend there. Can you imagine leaving your house alone for 10 years?
No, I can't.
And we have an old pre-Civil War farmhouse. So there's a lot of work that has to be done on that. And my list of honeydews is about 2.5 pages long, single space. So I've got some time to
What's your wife's list look like? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, that's part of the honeydew.
Oh, okay. So you're combining the two.
There's a lot of indoor painting to do, a little carpentry work that I'm not very good at, but I'm going to have time to take the time, not to rush to get something done, but to do it. Catching up with friends across the state that I haven't really had the chance to catch up with, and keeping the new friends. We made a lot of new friends in the last 10 years across the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, I was having dinner with one of the great leaders, business leaders down from York County last night here, and we had him up to the residence with some other people, Ty King. And I think Ty's just a wonderful...
Ty's an excellent guy.
Yeah, isn't he? So, we're going to do that. A little bit of traveling. I've never been to spring training.
Okay.
So,
and I'm assuming your team is the Pirates, right?
Well, I'm going to go to both.
Pirates and
the principal owner of the Phillies has become a very good friend also. So between the Nutting family and John Middleton and his wife in Philadelphia, I'm going to go to both camps.
By the way, just don't hug anybody while you're there. You might get you're not a governor anymore. You might get in some trouble, though.
Yeah, I'm not a huggy kind of guy like that either.
I'm kidding you.
Yeah, I know. That's a whole other story for another day. And then we bought and obviously took some criticism for investing in a condo in Hilton Head, where we like to go. We're going to spend a couple of weeks down there in April to go to the Heritage Golf Classic.
Oh, great!
Enjoy that.
Yep.
Maybe do a little traveling. I really haven't started talking to any individuals about some kind of work. I don't, law firms are starting to pick up the phone and say, talk to us before you do anything. I might do a little teaching at college. One of the law schools has talked to me about maybe to come in there and do a little bit of teaching. So there's going to be a lot to do. And as I said, I belong to 3 different organizations, former governors, former attorneys general, and former U.S. attorneys. So it's a pretty good Rolodex to be able to, be a consultant and do something like that. So, and then, as you know, we got 16 coming real fast.
Yep, exactly right.
And I will be involved as a Republican on the Republican side in helping to see that we get a new Republican president in 16.
It's probably too early to ask you this, but any thoughts about ever running for public office again on any level?
No, I am done at this point in time. I've run now statewide 4 times, won 3. And for a Republican to win 3 times statewide is unusual. There aren't too many people who run statewide 3 times and won in a row. And if I would have won 4, that would have been up there with Arlen Specter and people like that. And in fact, somebody was telling me the other day, I'm the first person from Pittsburgh to run statewide successfully 3 times in a row. So I didn't know that fact. In fact, it was a Democrat that told me that.
Well, as we close out here, a final thought for people that, we've talked to you a lot over the years. I kidded with you one time. I met you first time. Stan Saylor introduced me to you at the York Fair. I remember you were running for Attorney General then.
Yep.
And you've been very kind a couple times. When I switched shows over, I got a nice note from you. I know you listen from time to time, but what would you say to Pennsylvanians now as we move forward? Kind of a final thought for them.
Well, first off, Happy New Year to everybody.
Yes. And Happy New Year to you, by the way.
Well, thank you. We wish them the best in the new year. And I would say we have great hope here in Pennsylvania. I really get tired of seeing the people that always report that the glass is half empty. The glass isn't half empty. The future of Pennsylvania is a bright, bright future. I get to see it because I'm traveling the state. Some regions are doing better than other regions. But, as each region does well, it helps, it lifts the boat. As you know, the high tide raises all boats. It is coming here in Pennsylvania. We could get a couple more changes in some of the laws that would probably help a little bit more, but I feel very optimistic. And probably my biggest disappointment is I'm not going to be here for the next 4 years to see the work that we've done in the first 4 years, the foundation we have built, come to fruition in the second 4 years and much longer after that.
Well, Governor, I just want to say on a personal note to you that I've enjoyed talking to you. I've enjoyed knowing you over the last how many ever years you've been with us, and we wish you the best in whatever you do in the future. But you're a good and decent man, and I think all people would say you've worked very, very hard. You've done a lot of good things for Pennsylvania, and I know wherever you go, you'll be doing good things for others as well, because that's always been your nature. So we truly appreciate what you've done and appreciate your time you've given us here on the show on a regular basis.
Well, Gary, thank you very much. And even though we're in Pittsburgh, the phones work. Cell phone technology, you ever want to talk, just pick up the phone and call me.
Well, have someone drop me your number, okay, before you go, and I'll use that sparingly, because I know you're going to be spending a lot of time with those grandchildren, too, okay?
Oh, yeah, but they're kind of spread out. And, the great thing about grandparents is you can give them back when when they become too unruly.
Well, you're always welcome on this show, and we'd love to have you back and get your thoughts anytime. So if you haven't sent me that number, I'll be glad to call it from time to time. And thank you again for being with us, and thank you for your service.
We'll talk to you later.
Take care. Governor Tom Corbett with us here on the Gary Sutton Show, and thank you very much, Governor.